What's up, guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2005 Mercury Montego. Up front is a 3.0 liter V6, and down below is a 6-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Mercury Montego for two reasons. First of all, I've never featured a Montego here on the channel before, so it's another new car to show off. Well, not new, obviously they don't make Montegos anymore, and Mercury's not even around anymore, but new to the channel nevertheless. The second reason is the fact that I think this is the pinnacle of the mortal sin of rebadging. And so we'll get into that later. We'll talk a lot about rebadging with the final thoughts segment, so stay tuned. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form, takes under a minute to fill out. And huge thank you to North Naperville Autos for letting me borrow their Montego for today's video. If you'd like to browse their inventory, you can do so in the description below. But let's get back to that 3-liter dual overhead cam V6 under the hood. Well, it's honestly nothing too special. It is a Duratec engine, which was co-developed and co-used with Mazda because Ford actually owned Mazda during this era. Now, the Montego being a step up from the Ford Taurus, of which it shares 90% of its parts with, the V6 now became standard, where the Taurus could be had with a 4-cylinder. It's fine. I'll put the horsepower up on the screen. There's no sense they wouldn't have put a V8 into this car. It's just kind of one of those wishy-washy cars that just doesn't really matter. Like I said, paired to it is a 6-speed automatic. Now, this is a little bit before 6 speeds were as common as they would later become, so nice to see that as well. And last but not least, the Montego is front-wheel drive. How does it feel to drive the Mercury Montego? Drives a lot like standing in a buffet line at the old folks' home. Whatever spring chicken it might have been at one point has gone and roosted. It's not very fun to drive. It is very blobby. Everything in here is tan, which doesn't help. As you're seeing in the POV drive, I really truly feel like I'm piloting a hearing aid, so that certainly doesn't help, but I will say visibility is good, ride quality is good as well, and the road noise is relatively low. So on that front, it actually is a pretty well-performing machine. I just don't think that it's too stellar in any category. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is my tachometer, in the center is my coolant temperature and fuel, and off to the right is my speedometer. On the steering wheel, we have cruise control, volume seek, media, and mute right here in the center, along of course with our airbag. And off to the left, we have a climate control vent, headlight switch, gauge dimmer switch, and trunk release. Moving on to the door up top, we have our power mirror switches, but down below we have our power locks and power windows. Moving into the center, we get this really big compartment, which carried on through the Ford Transits of the 2010s. So Ford really liked using this. Pretty cool, pretty nice feature to have. Down below, we have 2 climate control vents and a clock, an analog clock. Really love to see that. Does classen up the interior a little bit. And down below, we have the very typical Ford 6-disc CD changer radio. We saw this in a lot of vehicles like the Freestyle, of course, the Taurus. Pretty much any closer to full-size vehicle, aka not Fiesta, we saw this radio. Down below that, we have dual zone climate for our climate controls, fan speed, where to send it, all laid out really nice. Ford was using a lot of buttons in this era, and this feels almost minimalistic compared to those other cars, which I really like. I've never been fond of overuse of buttons, so this all looks good. We do have buttons for the hazard switch, traction control off, and 12-volt outlet. And then we have the shifter off to the left, very plasticky shifter, again, shared with a lot of Ford products at the time. No news there. However, off to the right, we do have cup holders, and the front cup holder is big enough to accommodate the big friggin' bottle. So the Mercury Montego from 2005 passes the big friggin' bottle test. Then we get an odd little cubby and the center console. Coin holders and dividers in there, but nothing crazy beyond that. And the seats are finished in a nice leather. They are of course power seats, and they are pretty comfortable. I really do enjoy sitting here in the Montego and driving it. It's a rather relaxing experience due to those seats. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2005 Mercury Montego, and a couple of things to note. First of all, I do have climate vents down here, although they are small. They are helped during today. It's really warm today, even though it's September. Don't really like that. We do have a center console with cup holders as well. This looks like it would pass the big friggin' bottle test as well. So let's try, even though this is not a requirement. Yes, this also passes the big friggin' bottle test. Big cup holders in the Montego. One of the few redeeming qualities. We also have some storage back here. Bada bing, bada boom. Grab handles. That's it. Everything in here is tan. I feel like I'm waking up in the Sahara. Actually, no, in all reality, it does feel like an old folks' home. I definitely feel like I should be getting helped out of a chair and talking about the glory days as MeTV is playing in the background at some incredibly loud volume. Can cars be depressing? Can you actually get sad from a car? Let's hop into the trunk. Right on the back of the Mercury Montego, we do have a blue trunk popper button here on the key, and pull it up the rest of the way. Here it is. Here's the trunk of the Montego. It is pretty big, but again, this car is so boring. It's just so boring. I would honestly much rather try to figure out what tree this is. All right, it's a Tartarian maple. It's a species of maple tree, or a Carpenius orientalis. All right, well, the Montego's boring, but at least you learned something about this particular tree. Also, I found this on the ground. I think it's magnetic. Hey, look at that. So, cool little addition to the Montego. All right, goodbye forever. Now we gotta talk about the looks. And again, just like the interior, the exterior is painted in one of the most boring colors I could physically imagine. Everything about this is just melty and blobby, and I don't even have my macaroni styling feelings about this car. This car doesn't bring me any nostalgia. It doesn't bring me any warm fuzziness, even though my coming of age time was around 2005. I never cared for these cars, and I still don't care for them today. So visually, I could take it or leave it, but I'll probably end up leaving it. All right, quick correction here after the fact while I'm editing. I keep calling this car a rebadged Ford Taurus. It's actually the rebadge of the Ford 500, which was the slightly bigger Taurus at the time, but I think it just goes to show of how messy and how ugly these rebadges were and how really not great Ford's designs were, because I just kept mixing them up. So I keep saying that's a rebadged Ford Taurus. It's actually a rebadged Ford 500. Now you know. Anyway, let's get back to it. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a Mercury Montego? The actual driving portion and feelings on this car aren't that grandeur. I don't really like it. The main reason I don't like it is because it does feel like Ford was just trying to pull a fast one. It's like they were trying to say, no, this isn't a Taurus. This is something on its own. It's a Mercury Montego. And so, during this time, Ford and especially GM were rebadging their vehicles at an insane pace. And while rebadging still exists today, and I think it will always exist because it is a way for a manufacturer to save money, it was so blatant and almost in your face in this era, because this doesn't look anything different. They just added some lines on the taillights. I mean, this car was probably theorized in a single board meeting just before lunch. It really has pre-lunch on a Friday vibes to it. Whatever the case may be, this does feel like they really phoned it in for this one. And so when the financial crisis hit in 2008, GM from the government had to cut half their companies. The government told them, you have too many companies. And while Ford didn't take bailout money and they weren't forced to really do anything, they had to reevaluate themselves. And so with it, blatant, in-your-face, obvious rebadging kind of got kicked to the curb, along with the Mercury brand as a whole. They got rid of this brand. They don't make Mercurys anymore. But brands had to be smarter, and I think the consumer is better off because of that. Like Lexus and Toyota still rebrand, like the new GX550 is the same as the new Land Cruiser, but you could tell at least they tried. They changed them visually. Underneath, sure, they're the same, but put them side by side, there's very obvious notes that they are different. This just feels like a decent trim level of a Taurus. This is just a Taurus with sunglasses and a mustache. So of all of the terrible things, and I really truly mean terrible things that happened during the 2008 financial crisis. People lost their homes, people lost their jobs. It wasn't a good time. My family personally was affected by it. If there's any positive to come out of that era, it would be this. That vehicles like this that were so obviously just a quick job to make a buck kind of went by the wayside. It made brands actually give a rip for a quarter of a second. And while that might not seem like a lot, that might not seem like a big victory for consumers abroad, it really truly was. And so here it is, the Mercury Montego. Not really a fan, but I'm a fan of how it changed. And that might be enough for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to North Naperville Autos for letting me take out their Mercury Montego. North Naperville Autos is absolutely wonderful. They offer mobile detailing, they offer financing and shipping. So if you are not in the Chicagoland area, but you would like a North Naperville Autos vehicle, don't fret, you can still buy one and have it shipped to any of the 48 states. They're wonderful to work with. Please go check out their inventory in the description below. I don't think you'll regret it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.